Good morning, this is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for September 4th around 6:30 a.m. There is growing concern for a hurricane strike in the northern Leeward Islands, the Greater Antilles, which would include Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Cuba, and of course the Bahamas are at risk, and Florida in the future from Hurricane Irma. So let's get to all the graphics on this. Here is a close-up enhanced satellite shot from NASA showing Hurricane Irma getting better organized this morning. Notice the pronounced eye now in the center of the hurricane, also known as the CDO, the central dense overcast, all the way around the eye. And we have a buzzsaw look to this, so it's definitely intensifying this morning, and we'll know a lot more when the hurricane hunters get out there. In yesterday's Tropical Update video, I showed you how close Irma would come to St. Martin, which is the current feature at Hurricane City. And at that time, it was 41 nautical miles to the north. And now we are seeing that it is going to pass 20 nautical miles to the north of the island, and it may pass directly over that. This is according to the National Hurricane Center official forecast, and this is for 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And at the time that this passes nearby, the winds would be approximately 140 miles per hour. And again, that is subject to change. It could be stronger or it could be slightly weaker. And then here we are at the end of the 5-day forecast from the National Hurricane Center. And you can see Hurricane Irma has winds of around 125 mile per hour winds just north of Cuba near the city of Navitas and southeast of Andros Island. So when it comes to models and forecasting, you ask, what have you done for me lately? Who has been performing the best lately? So I went back and researched last year's forecast and model data from the 2016 Atlantic hurricane season, and you can see here from the NHC abstract that the GFSI and the EGRI, the UK Met and the GFS, were the best performing short-term models, but the EMXI had the highest skill of any individual model from 72 to 120 hours. And the UEMI was not bad as well. The National Hurricane Center likes to keep track of the performance of all these individual models. In 2016, these were the best performers, and you can see right here the EMXI, which is the European interpolated model, is only off by 172 miles here at a 5-day period. The next best performers down here are the Florida State Super Ensemble model, the TVCA, and the HCCA down here. So what we're going to do is run some of these models, since these were the best performers last year, and the UEMI, of course, the UK Met model is in that group as well. So we'll run these and see what they're showing for Irma. Now, the NHC does an outstanding job on track forecast. There's no such thing as a perfect forecast. So anybody that wants to know exactly where this is going to go in 5 days is just barking up the wrong tree. But let's take a look at the performance of the National Hurricane Center forecast track errors going back to 1990 up until last year. And you can see that they're clearly improving in every aspect of long-range forecasting. For example, they're only off by maybe 50 miles at a 24-hour period, whereas at 5 days, they're off by about 160 miles at 5 days. So this thing could be, based on the track I showed you, just north of Cuba. It could be up near north of the Bahamas, or it could be over Cuba in 5 days. There's a lot of uncertainty at 5 days, but the National Hurricane Center continues to improve, and that's because the models continue to improve. Now, when it comes to intensity, the National Hurricane Center has had some issues in the long range at 5 days with some of these systems really ramping up an intensity that was unforeseen in the models, or at least in some of the models, and by the National Hurricane Center. But if you see here in 2007, it looks like we had the most errors on the intensity throughout the entire hurricane season. And then last year here, we were right around 16, 17 knots off, which, is right around 20 miles an hour off on the intensity of these hurricanes. So there could be a wild fluctuation here as this gets further into the Bahamas and or tangles with the Greater Antilles, which would greatly weaken the system. So it could go either way depending on where it's located and environmental factors that go into this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the National Hurricane Center keeps track year by year of the best performing models. And I showed you the TVCA as one of the best performers. And this uses a combination of the AVNI, the EMXI, the HWFI, the CTCI, and the EGRI. In a nutshell, that's basically the GFS model, the European model, the HWRF model, the Canadian, and the UK Met all mixed together. And this is the track that you come up with for the 2016 best performer. So the European model has been the best performer overall on Irma. This is excluding 2016 data, but for this year on this particular storm, the European model is performing the best, off by only 33.6 miles in 4 days. So here we are at Tropical Tidbits. Let's go ahead and run the European model. And again, this is issued twice a day, so the next one will be out in a few hours after this update video is over. So this particular run I'm about to show you might not be what's going to show in a couple of hours from now, but let's go ahead and go frame by frame. Very, very close to the northern Leeward Islands, north of Puerto Rico, right over Great Anagua in the Bahamas, right where Ike hit in 2008, and then hitting Cuba, believe it or not, right near Navitas, Cuba, and then it makes the turn to the north, a very sharp right-hand turn right off the coast of Florida, and then up towards the North Carolina, South Carolina border, and then inland. And again, that track at landfall in the United States would be on September 12th and 13th, and down near Florida would be on Sunday, Monday time period, September 10th or 11th, and the turn would be very close to the state of Florida. So this is going to be a nail biter, but this is the European, and it is a pretty darn good model. Even going out 5 days, it's pretty good. So everybody likes to keep track of the differences between the GFS and the European model. Those are the two major global models that we use for tracking these systems as they move through the Atlantic Basin. And the GFS has been off by about 118 miles at 4 days, whereas the European model is only off by 33 miles at 4 days. So the European has been far outperforming the GFS. But let's go ahead and run the GFS anyway and see what it's showing, because you never know. I mean, down the road, the GFS could end up being more right. But here's the GFS taking it north of Hispaniola and then right into Cuba for as long as 36 hours, which would really diminish the intensity of this system. And then it turns north. Again, that turn to the north is expected to happen, going through the state of Florida and inland in the United States. And again, that would be going into September 11th, 12th would be the Florida impact. Again, Sunday, Monday would be the day that Florida would really have to batten the hatches down if that track were to pan out. And finally, we have the latest recon fixes on Hurricane Irma. They're flying the Lockheed WP-3D Orion aircraft. The NOAA 2 is in there right now, and you can see the pressure is dropping. We have an intensifying system. It was 951 millibars, and now the latest fix is showing 948. So we have falling pressure out here. And here is the vortex message from the center of the hurricane. And we have an estimated surface wind around 103 miles an hour. But again, that's just one particular reading. It's still, I guarantee it's major and intensifying at this time. And let's see, we have differential in the eye wall, a few degrees, not anything dramatic, but it is definitely increasing in intensity, and the pressure, it takes a little while for the winds to catch up to the pressure. The pressure falls first, and then the winds catch up later. So it is definitely dropping its pressure, intensifying. So we're going to see the winds come up definitely in the 11 a.m. advisory, and then for sure it's going to really ramp up probably by the 5 p.m. advisory. All right, so to wrap things up, we have a major hurricane heading toward the northern Leeward Islands. Everyone in the northern Leeward Islands, including Antigua, Barbuda, St. Martin, and even in the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, need to really be ready for hurricane impacts. If you live in the Bahamas, the Greater Antilles, even Hispaniola and Cuba, you really need to be getting ready for hurricane impacts. And if you live in Florida, it wouldn't be a bad idea to head to the store, get your stuff now, because it looks like this is going to have some sort of an impact on Florida. I also want to mention, looking at this map, that cone could shift further to the south. The models have been trending left day by day by day. And again, we're still about 7 days away from impact in the United States. So this could still enter the Gulf of Mexico, and we'll get to that whole aspect of things. This has a long way to go, and this track could fluctuate a lot. So everybody needs to keep a very close eye on Hurricane Irma. And a reminder, nightly at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, discussion on Hurricane Irma each night until final landfall on hurricanecity.tv, or you can click the Facebook logo on the front page of Hurricane City or the Ustream logo, and you can watch the live stream at either of those places. And they are recorded and looping on the live feed at Hurricane City 24 hours a day. Now, as far as video updates, tomorrow's going to be a tough one. I have a very busy schedule. I'm going to try to do an update video late in the afternoon tomorrow or in the evening. There will be no morning video. And then I'll try to do an update video every single day until this finally makes its way inland, wherever that may be. And we'll do the best we can to provide constant information on what's happening. You always go to the front page. You get all the detailed information about the track, the best performing models, and where the system is headed. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Jim Williams. Thank you for watching.